Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone who could join us today for this ISB PGP applications masterclass. This is Sarthak from the Career Edge team. I'm sorry for spamming all of you thrice today with reminder emails. So we have Mr. Amit Tyagi, who's the Associate Director in the admissions team at ISB, to help us with all our queries. All of us know that the round one deadlines are coming up on September 10th. A lot of us are also preparing for round two, which is historically, in the first week of December. And some of us are exploring if ISB is the right school for us or not. But just to set some context, this is not an info session. All of us know that it's the best business school in the country. All of us know that it's great in terms of consulting placements, product management placements, all of that. We wanted to make it a little more productive, right? So I have collated 4 or 5 very frequently asked questions with respect to ISB applications with me, which I'll ask first to Amit on everybody's behalf. And then I'll open it up, right? You can put your questions in the chat, you can raise hands, whatever works. Just one request: ensure that your questions are not too personalized, right? Ensure that your questions would help somebody else in this session as well, because we have limited time. And if you have, questions with respect to profile evaluation, you can directly reach out to the ISB team. Trust me, they are super responsive. When I was applying in 2017, they used to reply to me in 30 minutes. And even now they have a similar tat. And you can reach out to me also, right? So we provide services around applications, mentorship, all of that. So before that, I'll just hand over to Amit to give his intro, and then we can get started.
Hi everyone, welcome to this session, and so glad to be here. And thank you, Sarthak, for inviting me on this session. I'm Amit Tyagi, as Sarthak has already mentioned. I lead the PGP admissions team at ISB, and been with ISB for 3.5 years now, mainly with the PGP and the PGP Pro program. And happy to be here to answer all your queries today. And let's roll. Yeah.
Awesome. This is a very special year because the essay topics have changed. We have the GMAT focus edition coming up. So a lot of changes are happening. So one thing which a lot of, our mentees also keep on asking me when they enroll with us is, why have the essays changed this year? Earlier, we used to have 2 essays. Now we have 3 essays, very introspective. So is there any reason behind this?
Yeah. So in fact, we used to change essays every 2 or 3 years. Essays do keep changing, and I think they were due to change the last 2 3 years. That was one. And of course, one major reason why we changed the essays to what they are now and made one of the essays mandatory is that we now want to know more about you as a person, about your self-awareness, clarity of your thought, and your self-awareness per se, and your unique qualities. So if you look at the 2 mandatory essays, both of them are on similar lines. They talk about your personal characteristics and your self-awareness. The third essay is now mandatory, which is the career goals essay. And why it's mandatory is that we realize that a lot of people, they don't have a fixed goal when they come to ISB, or they will want to come to ISB and then explore the opportunities there. Versus somebody who comes with a very fixed mind and then is intent on going through the ISB program and with a very fixed goal of getting into, let's say, consulting or investment banking. So idea is to encourage people to have an open mind, to come into ISB, explore the initial courses, and then make up your mind on where you want to go. So hence the career goals essay is not mandatory. We don't want you to pick one thing out and then talk about it. You can, in fact, use that space to also talk about your broad goals and your thought process. So thought process is more important in terms of the career goals. Hence, that is non-mandatory. But the other 2 things is we want to know you more as a person, about your awareness, self-awareness. So that's what the essay is intended to do this year.
Awesome. I must say, Amit, you have made everybody's life more difficult, because now everybody's scratching their heads on what to write. And my life has also been more difficult over the last, 2-3 months, because, the first essay is very difficult. You have to encapsulate your life story in 400 words. So now whoever, comes to us for a profile evaluation or anything, I also tell them that park at least 6 to 8 weeks for essays, because they're more difficult now. Understood. But thank you so much for that input. Just one thing, and you can feel free to decline to answer. How does ISB evaluate someone? Is there any percentage assigned to GMAT, any percentage on essays, and any percentage on profile?
Sure. So I'll not go into the percentages per se, but I'll give you a broad idea or overview to the audience in this session today. So when we evaluate candidates, the first step is to build a profile score. And that happens through a quantitative mechanism that reviewers go through profile and they'll give you a score to the profile, and the average of which becomes a profile score. And that consists primarily of your work experience, your ACADS, your GMAT and GRE scores, your essays, and your letters of recommendation. Now, each of them may have varying weightages, some may have higher, some may have lower, but none of them is high enough that, if you score very well in that particular area, you'll definitely get through the next round, or low enough that if you are not good there, you'll definitely not go through. It's not like that. It's all about balancing your profile. Now, there's a cutoff for the profile score above which people are called for the interviews. And the interviews, the LMs will interview you and they will interview on qualitative parameters. While profile score is more quantitative, here it's more qualitative things. So LMs will have complete access to your profile in terms of your essays, your work history, your undergrad courses, LORs, and so on and so forth, but they'll not have access to quantitative parameters, your GMAT score or GRE score or your undergrad scores and so on and so forth. And they give you a score. Now, this two scores are added together in a ratio to get your overall score, which determines your chances of offer and scholarship. So this in brief is what the process is all about. Now, the weightages is something which is integral to the process. So I'll not share that right now.
No worries. Thank you so much, Amit, for that. One very, peculiar question and very relevant as well, which is, a lot of mentees, a lot of applicants who are considering applying in the later rounds, like round 2, round 3, they are basing their decision on the fact that, GMAT is going to be condensed. It's going to be easier, supposedly. So that's why a lot of people who come to me tell me that Sarthak, main round 1 mein apply nahi kar raha. Why? Because round 2 mein GMAT will be easier. The focus edition is coming up. So how will the school normalize the selection criterion for that?
Sure. So first of all, the classical edition will continue for the foreseeable future, at least is what our understanding is. So we work closely with GMAT team here in India, since we are one of the biggest users of the test here in India. So the focus edition, although it has come in, it's still new and it's on a different scale altogether. So in the focus edition, will be graded on the scale of not 710 or in multiples of 10, but in multiples of 5, 705, 715, 725, and so on and so forth. And again, there's a scale for conversion of focus to classical, is what our understanding is, and we'll use that when we're comparing scores across the two tests. Having said that, but my own personal feeling is that classical edition is something which we all know about. It's a known entity right now. Focus is something which it'll come in September and we'll 2-3 months to get to know how the test is, what's all about. So the assumption that it's going to be easier is not something which can go right away with. So I'll still suggest people, don't wait for focus to come in, or don't wait for classical to be phased out. Take your test when you feel is the right time. That's my advice to people, because and be rest assured, whether it's classical or focus you take, we have our mechanisms to compare across the two tests, and a due weightage will be given to the candidates for both of the tests.
Got it. Understood. So, we talked about that it's a very holistic evaluation. There is no North Star that the school is looking for. But is there any deal breaker for ISB? I'll tell you why I'm asking this question. A lot of people, who come to us, they tell us, I have a gap year. I was preparing for UPSC. I have a 60% in college. So is there any certain parameter which is, absolutely a no-go for ISB?
So there's no such thing. If you look at, career gaps, perfectly fine. Of course, you'll have career gaps, but how do you project them in application? That's important, right? So if you're preparing for 2.5 years or 3 years for UPSC or any other competitive examination, and you don't make it, you're coming to ISB as a plan B. But those 3 years are not waste. You learned something from that failure. You've grown as a person, evolved as a person. Focus on those aspects in your application and your interview, rather than being apologetic about having a 3-year gap or which you are doing nothing. You're not doing nothing. You're doing something which will help you grow as a person. So
Got it.
that's what you have to focus on. In fact, this reminds me of a conversation I just had recently in Mohali campus with a current student. So he has 8 years of work experience. He's from the government sector. He has 3 years of gap in his profile while he was preparing for various examinations, and then 5 years of work experience in the government sector. And now, after resigning from a government job, he's come to ISB, right? So there are a lot of such cases of people getting in with the right attitude, right? So if you have breaks perfectly fine, what you have to ensure is have the right attitude, and what the learnings from that you have to incorporate in your application. That's what matters.
Got it. Thank you so much for that, Amin. One thing which I know the school has explicitly mentioned in various info sessions and the website, but still I'll ask for the sake of completeness. In terms of admissions likelihood and scholarships, is there any difference between round one and round two?
So typically in round one, we offer 100% of tuition fee waivers to candidates. And round two, in the previous years, it has been maximum of 75% of tuition fee waivers. So
Okay.
that's what the difference is in terms of scholarships or admissions. That's all, nothing else. And it's up to. So there's no quantum or other things decided. As long as you are meritorious, you will get scholarships. But in round one, the maximum scholarship quantum 100%, in round two up to 75%, and
Okay.
round three also is 75%. So that's the difference between round one, round two, and round three in terms of scholarships.
Understood. So in terms of admissions likelihood, there is no
Yes,
difference.
no difference. But I'll suggest to candidates, apply when you're ready. Don't delay unnecessarily just because you want to hit a particular round, or don't even just push through your application just because you want to apply by 10 September. Be sure that this is your best score, this is your best essay, this is your best application, and then put in your application by the time. So plan ahead and try to hit round one if possible. If not, ensure the application is complete, is the best you can put your foot forward, and then apply whether it's round two or round three.
Got it. Understood. And two more questions before I give it to the audience. One is, if you're a reapplicant, is there any, an asterisk attached to your name? Does the school look at you a little more negatively or anything else?
No, not at all. So in fact, reapplicants have two advantages. One is that you can reach out to us the next year and ask for feedback on your application.
Okay.
So just write a mail to pgp@isb.edu once the process is done in May, June, around that time. And we'll be happy to get on a call with you and give you a feedback on what went wrong, what could have been better. So that gives you an idea of what you have to improve in this year's admissions. Second is you get to write one more essay. So a lot of people would feel that it's an additional burden. No, it's not. It's one more real estate in the application for you to highlight your most recent skill sets, right? And it could be a very good conversation starter, because when you go to interview, LMs will really be curious to know what you've been doing in the last 1 year. And if there's something really interesting, it could actually start an interview off on a good note. So otherwise, there's no difference in reapplicant or a fresh applicant. We don't look at reapplicants any different than a normal fresh application. So beyond the application stage, when you put yourself as a reapplicant and write one more essay, there's no difference in terms of evaluation.
Got it. Last question from my end. Does the quality of WorkX matter? I'll tell you why I'm asking this, because, if somebody comes from a big three or a big four, to me, they're very confident on their WorkX. But, if I'm evaluating the profile for someone who has worked in their family business or an early stage startup, they inherently have this in their mind, कि यार WorkX तो मेरा खराब ही है. So what is your say on that?
No. So WorkX is not just about the company that you work for, right? It's also about your progression. So what we look at is progression in terms of your work experience. So if you work for 4 years, whether in the same role, whether you're in the same job, and what we're learning, or vis-a-vis somebody who has made a lot of strides in their work. Strides could be in terms of promotions, in terms of salary hikes, in terms of responsibilities handled, in terms of international exposure, in terms of any other work exposure. So that matters a lot. So people who come with startups actually would have an edge over somebody who's worked in a accurate company, but in the same role and doing the same kind of work with little progression. So people who come with startups should not feel that their work experience is bad. In fact, they could have a lot to talk about, because startups, you get a lot of opportunities to progress in your work, take on higher responsibilities at an early stage. So definitely that will add to your profile.
Yeah, understood. Thank you so much, Amit, for that. So I'll open it up for the audience. You can ask questions in the chat box. I'll pick them up, the most frequent ones, and I'll ask them to Amit. A couple of questions were there. Can we apply to ISB without GMAT or GRE? I believe that's not the case. You have to submit a GMAT or GRE score. That's imperative. Does the number of GMAT attempts or your previous GMAT score impact your application?
No, it doesn't. We'll take your best score before the deadline. So if you're applying to round one this year, the best score which we have from you before the deadline will be considered, but not after the deadline. So best score before the deadline is what is considered by us.
Understood. Guys, feel free to put your questions in the chat. Okay, one very frequent question that Satakshi asked. What is the score range acceptable for ISB? I mean, below which score is, you should consider ki nahi hone wala.
So, if I give you the range for the current class, which is there in the two campuses now, the range is 530 to 780. Right? Okay. So somebody with 530 is also in the class. Somebody with 780 is also in the class. But of course, the disclaimer here is the 530 person is somebody with international exposure, has 10 to 12 years of solid work experience in a top multinational company in India, and he's also a lot of other diverse exposures. But people with anything above 610, 620, if you have good parameters, other parameters, you can consider yourself in running. But the average scores are 710. Average score for last year's class was 710 for GMAT. For GRE, it was 328 or 329. So, if you think that you have 4 years of work experience, decent or average acads, try to get as close to average as possible is what my suggestion is. That will also give a good buffer.
Got it. Understood. Can I apply to R2 if my application is rejected in R1? No. Neeti, you can only apply once a year. It can be R1 or R2 or R3. How many years of work ex is good to apply for ISB? I'll give my input and Amit can give his input. So I think broadly the median is 4.5, 5 years. But I applied with the least possible work ex, which was 20 months, and I got through. So I believe there is no right answer, but Amit can give his answer too.
Sure. So you can apply for direct entry with at least 24 months of work experience as on 31st of March of that year. So if you will have 24 months of work experience by 31st of March 2024, you can apply for next year's class. But even if you have less work experience as on that particular day, if your work ex is now less than 2 years, you can still apply under the early entry option. So these are people who will get a deferred admission. You can't join the class, but you'll get a confirmed admission right now if you're good enough, if you've got decent parameters apart from your lesser work experience, and you get a confirmed admission to join the next year's cohort by when you will have to complete 24 months of work experience.
Got it. One question which Chaitanya asked, which is very relevant, which is, a lot of people consider ISB for a dual MBA. They make ISB their second business school. So is that okay, or do you get probed that why are you coming for a second MBA here?
So of course it's okay in the sense that a lot of people do that. They come and they do the second MBA, and there are reasons for them to do that. But of course you'll be probed in the interview. I mean, people will ask you the reason for doing the second MBA, and there are valid answers to that. If you are prepared with the answers, it should not be a deal breaker at all.
Got it. I mean, somebody can do their first MBA, get some work ex, and then apply for ISB.
Yes. So I personally know quite a few people who have done that. After 3-4 years of work experience, come to ISB and then did the second MBA.
Got it. Understood. Do re-applicants need to give a new LOR? I think yes, but you can get it from the same person who did it last year. Okay. Is ISB accepting GRE or GMAT at home test score? I think yes, they do. Can you get foreign placement opportunities once you graduate from ISB?
Yes. So last few years, the opportunities were limited because of obvious reasons, because of a lot of visa reasons, and the cross-border movement was restricted. Last year, that openings have again come up. So we had around 31 international offers last year. People who got placed directly from campus last year. And that's a start because we're just moving away from the pandemic, and it will take some time for companies to open up to cross-border hiring. But yes, we do have openings internationally, and a lot of those companies which hire the students in the first year send them abroad after a year or so of work experience. So the McKinseys, the BCGs, the Bains, the Googles or Amazons, you'll be there for 1 year in the Indian offices and usually get posted to offices abroad after a year or so in India. So a lot of those hirings also happen.
Got it. One question which Nigam asked, which I think a lot of CAs or CFAs will have is that, you are doing your CA alongside your undergrad. So a lot of people, even when they come to us, they have, a 60% or a 65% in undergrad because they were doing their CA. So does a CA compensate for that in terms of the academics lens?
To an extent, it does. It does. So
Okay.
if you have higher, marks in your undergrad and also a CA degree, definitely be a plus. But to an extent, CA will overcome your CADs in your undergraduate that if they're on the lower side.
Got it. Understood. Is there any specific scholarship for people who are working abroad?
Yes. So there are two scholarships for international candidates. First is for people with international passports. So if they are whether international citizens, then we offer up to 100% of tuition fee waivers based on the performance in the ISB selection process. Up to 100% is what we offer. And then second is Bridge to India scholarships. This is for people who are Indian citizens working abroad but want to come back to India to restart their corporate career or pursue their MBA from ISB. So for them as well, we offer scholarships up to 100% of tuition fee waivers depending upon their performance in the ISB selection process.
Got it. Understood. So I know that ISB has an exchange program, but somebody asked this question, so I'll let you give a quick input on that.
So we have exchange collaborations with 50 plus universities on the last count. Of course, in the pandemic, the number which went abroad was lesser, although we have the collaborations with them. Now that it has opened up, so people can expect to have maximum utilization of the collaborations which we have. So collaborations are across the world. Kellogg, Wharton, then Europe, a lot of schools, INSEAD, Australia, Southeast Asia. So yes, a lot of collaborations, and you can expect to spend a term there. In fact, recently, if you look at a social media post, one of our students spent a term at Korea Business School. So that also you can look at and maybe reach out to her for her experience. So a lot of opportunities for people to go abroad and spend a term. You typically get to spend 5 weeks to 10 weeks abroad.
Got it. So is there a fair shot if you have no work ex and are fresh out of grad school? Yes, Akansh, you can apply through the early entry option. It's for people who are applying for ISB when they have less than 24 months of work ex and have graduated. It's a deferred admit. So you will get your admit, but you can join technically once you complete 24 months of work ex. So the school has a different window of entry for that. If someone doesn't make it through YLP, then can they apply in the same year? I think yes.
Yes, you can.
Okay, understood. Okay, let's go down. Is 10 years of work experience negative?
No, it's not negative, but somebody who comes in with 10 years of work experience, the focus in the interview will be more on their work experience and their career goals. So what do they expect from this particular journey of 1 year and beyond? So your focus should be, you should have a lot of clarity in terms of career goals. So people with at least 8 to 10 years of work experience, because you cannot wish away your 8 years of work experience. You can use those skill sets in some different industry, but that clarity you should have which industry, what skill sets you possess through 8 or 10 years of work experience. That is what we'll expect in the interview. But definitely no bias, because this year we have people with even 22 years of work experience in the class.
Oh, wow. Understood. I mean, my neighbor at ISB was an army veteran. So this guy had 20 years of work ex from the Indian Navy. Yeah, so I can attest to that. So I graduated in 2021 and I have 4 years of work ex. So Vishesh, you can't apply for YLP right now because you're a working professional. You will have to apply through the normal PGP route. Okay. So Utkarsh, so guys, I'm intentionally skipping the questions which are a little too personalized. You can reach out to me or to the ISB team. We'll be happy to do a profile evaluation. What's the percentage of the cohort getting a scholarship typically?
So typically around 25% of the cohort gets some sort of a scholarship or other. So there are different types of scholarships. We have merit scholarship, merit cum means scholarships. And then there are a lot of other scholarships offered by donors or various partners. So there's a Citibank scholarship, AT&T scholarship, ISEC scholarship, and many others, which will, when you come to ISB, you'll be made aware of. And you can apply to those scholarships. So I think there's a scholarship of footballers, scholarship of women, and so on and so forth. And then there are scholarships when you graduate from ISB. So there is something called Develop India Scholarship for people who want to work in the social sector after graduating from ISB. So for them, we offer a stipend of around 3,000 rupees per month for the next 2 years. There's a President Scholarship. There's an IT scholarship for people who graduate in IT major. So a lot of scholarships available. Around 25% approximately should get some sort of scholarship or other in each year.
Yeah. And one thing which I think Manan asked, which is very relevant for an experienced professional. So, does the importance of GRE change if you have more than 5 years of work ex? Because, your work experience component will take precedence over your academics, which are a little more dated. So my question is, if you have more than 5 years of work ex, is it okay if you have a little lesser, lower GRE score?
Yes, it is definitely. So if you have more years of work experience, or if you have something really solid to put in terms of your exposure, and when I say more years of work experience, 5 or 10 years or 10 years of work experience, you have come with a background which will be very done something. Unless those 5-10 years have been spent exploring things, that's different. But if you have 10 years of solid work experience, you'll have something to showcase to the industry when you graduate from ISB, right? Along with the ISB. So definitely we'll give weightage to those aspects as well over the other GRE or CATS things.
Got it. What does ISB recommend more, GRE or GMAT? Both are equally preferred. There is no preference for one exam. Okay. So sorry for asking a YLP question. So Amit, I believe a full-time internship is not considered in terms of 20 months of work ex. Please correct me.
No, it's not considered if it's in sync with your undergrad. So for work experience, there are three rules. First is it should be a full-time activity. That is, it cannot be concurrent with any other full-time activity. You can't have two full-time activities at one go. So either your undergrad or your work ex will be part-time if they are in sync. Second is it should be a full-time thing. It can't be a 2-hour part-time tuition or something like that. And the third is it should be a paid activity. You can't do a volunteer work and call it a work experience. So these are three rules for work experience. And if any of these three are okay, you pass by any of these three, then you can count it as work experience.
Fair. And if let's say somebody is getting paid and they are interning somewhere after their undergrad, will that be considered?
That will be considered, yes.
Okay, understood.
So typically a lot of these people who join as graduate engineering trainees right after college, right? So that is considered as a work experience because they're getting paid, they're working for the organization, even though they're learning as an apprentice, but it's a work experience.
Got it. I hope that answers your question, Sampath and Alia. Okay. Understood. 1 second. Guys, any other questions, feel free to ask. Okay, Bhavin has raised his hand. Bhavin, can you put your question in the chat if that's okay? I mean, one question that a lot of people have is who exactly should be the recommender for the LOR? Because, people get confused if let's say I'm working with a startup. So should the job title matter? Should it be the CEO or should it be someone who has worked closely with you?
So it should be somebody who has worked closely with you because idea is to get to know your competencies better, right? And somebody who knows you better professionally only can answer the LOR which we send out to the recommender. So typically in the LOR it consists of 5 or 6 MCQs and it's not black and white, yes or no types or this is good, this is bad. It's more understanding of your competency and skill sets. So somebody who knows you closely in work can only answer those questions in the right way. So I'll suggest to candidates, don't look at the designations, don't go to the CEO. And if he just knows you in passing, go to your immediate reporting manager. That will be a much better bet.
Okay, understood. Fair. Guys, any other questions which you believe you want to ask? Does the number of promotions in your work experience put weightage on the profile? I think yes, definitely.
It will definitely do because it show not just the promotions, the work behind that will showcase, which it showcases, right? You're getting promoted because you did something, and those things you will need to talk about also in the interview.
Okay. Does a high CGPA compensate for a low GRE score? I can answer that. That happened with me, Rohan. So I did not have a very good GMAT score, but I, was doing well in my college. So I got an admit. So I think it definitely helps. At the end of the day, it's the academics column. So you have to look at it as a whole, 10th, 12th, college, and GMAT or GRE. Very good question. So just wanted to understand from a financial perspective, I have a package close to the average package at ISB, which is, 34, 35 LPA. Should I go ahead with this? I mean, what would be the 5-year ROI from an applicant's standpoint?
Sure. So, first of all, the package the average salary cities which you show, those are averages, right? And people are averages of 840 odd students. So there are going to be variations there. There are going to be people who are going to get higher. And the salaries are also dependent on your current skill sets. So if you're getting paid closer to the average salaries, your skill sets will be appropriate to those salaries, right? And those also will be in demand when you come to ISB. So you can expect a higher salary. That's one. But again, let's also assume that you don't get a higher salary, but a similar salary while joining from ISB. Then the 5-year ROI is going to be much different than if you're not doing an MBA. And forget 5-year ROI, look at 20-year ROI.
Yeah.
So you look at your organization right now, and if you want to be in the CXO or C-suite in organization, look at how many of them have MBAs. My guess is, or my bet would be 90% of them will have MBAs, right? So if you want to be there, then you have to do an MBA. The best time is now rather than doing it 15, 16 years later, they're doing the PGP Max or PGP Pro. This is the right time to do an MBA.
Got it. And guys, I can attest to this. I mean, I'm a very proud alum of the school. So the kind of life that you have post ISB, in terms of the safety cushion, the positional level promotions, the money that you get, all of that, it's immense. It's unparalleled, right? So, I'll definitely want you to explore, but rest, obviously, you can do your due diligence, talk to the admissions team. One thing that people just could not really understand earlier was the GRE range of the scores.
Right. So GRE range this year is 319 to 338, and the median is somewhere around 329.
Okay, 329. Understood. Okay. Can we take the LOR from the previous manager of the previous company? I think yes, that's definitely doable. Are recommendations from peers valuable, or do you have to get it from a manager?
I'll recommend managers or senior colleagues.
Okay.
That's more recommended.
Understood. Got it. Fair. How many candidates are usually selected in R1? I mean, let's say if we broadly take at the total student count, which is 900, out of them, how many are there in R1 in terms of intake?
So the fact is that, there is no fixed quota for rounds. We don't say that, we'll only take 40% in R1 or 40% in R2 and 20% in R3. It's not like that. If we get good candidates, we can take 100% of the seats in the R1 itself, right? There's always that risk, but it doesn't happen in real life. People apply at different times, and that's the whole point of having rounds, to give people flexibility in terms of the application. So people who apply early should get the results early. That's why the round system is there. But there's no fixed quota. It's all about the cutoffs, and cutoffs are consistent across the rounds. So if people meet the cutoffs in round one, more people can get into round one, and then subsequently, let's say in round two or round three. But it's all about the cutoffs, and cutoffs are consistent across the 3 rounds.
Got it. One very relevant question, which I was waiting for somebody to ask, because that's very pertinent given the current macroeconomic uncertainty, which is that some people are unfortunately being let go. layoffs, etc., all of that. If somebody is not employed when they are applying for ISB, how exactly does it influence the interview conversation and the application?
Sure. So definitely, the questions will be asked on, the reasons why they are not employed right now, or what are their career goals. But if they, of late, I think such situations are very common. We have seen such situations in pandemic and prior to that as well. So if you're, clear, and if you are confident, I don't think there should be a problem. Only thing is, don't be defensive, or don't, bromate yourself too much in the interview. It's
Fair.
all part of the life. Look at how you want to move on to the next step of your journey, and how ISE fits in. If you can communicate that to the interview panel, I think it should be perfectly fine.
Awesome. Got it. Do companies look at pre-MBA salary while hiring? I don't think so. They don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. How are EOs evaluated in comparison to PGPs? I think an EO will not be compared with a PGP
It will
applicant.
not be compared with the PGP.
Yeah.
So EOs will need to have slightly higher parameters to compensate for the lack of work experience. They have to
Okay.
showcase clarity in terms of their career goals, and the awareness and maturity. That's what we're looking at in EOs.
Okay. Understood. Uh, do companies, specifically consulting companies, ask for GMAT scores? I've been a student, no. I mean, you can write your GMAT score in your consulting CV while you're at ISB. Companies don't care. GMAT
No.
was the checkpoint when you were applying for ISB. As an ISB student, it can't be a point of difference. Right?
True.
Okay. Anything else? So very good question. What are the timelines this time around? I mean, if you apply by September 10th, when will we get the interview call and the admit?
Sure. So the deadline is 10 September. Then we are going to have in-person interviews this year.
Oh,
So by end of September, you should start getting calls for the respective cities. I think first a lot of cities will be Bombay and Hyderabad, and then Bangalore and Delhi. So depending upon which city, which location, but you should get a call in October. By October mid, we should complete all our interviews, and 8th of November, you'll get all the results. So exactly on 8th, you'll get all the accepts, rejects, and waitlist on 8th of November for
oh,
round one.
understood. So broadly 1 month ka gap hai. Understood. Fair. Does the school expect any correlation in the post MBA goal and the current role? I don't think so. Rohan, a lot of
So
people.
that's why the essay is non-mandatory this time, right?
Understood. And basis my experience, Rohan, I think a lot of people apply for consulting and PM. They might not be doing consulting or a businessy role when they're applying for ISB. It's about signaling your interest if you don't have the relevant work ex. Okay. Anything else? How long should I give for the application? Very subjective question, yaar. But I would say 6 to 8 weeks. That's my mentoring experience. But if you have a GMAT or GRE score, and if you have to apply for round one, then to aapko 1 month hi bacha hai. But don't submit half-baked essays. That's my feedback. Okay. Guys, anything else? Can someone who's working abroad attend the interview virtually? I think that option is available.
Yes, we can. You can do that.
Got it. Very relevant question, even though we don't have an interview invite as of now, Rohan, but are we asked to solve guesstimates in cases in the interviews if our post MBA goal is consulting?
I don't think so. That's us. So the interviews are going to be mostly on your application, and it's mostly on your aspirations and motivations, and what skill sets you bring to the table, and why you want to do an MBA and why from ISB. So those are the questions typically which the interviews revolve around, and of course also your awareness and knowledge of the industry in which you work in. So there might be a situation not about consulting, but industry that you work in, people might want to probe further and probe deeper into your knowledge and awareness. So that's something which you might want to know about. So if you're a software engineer, be aware with the current trends, the general trends about the industry, and so on and so forth, not just about your code. That's what my advice is. But no, if you no guesstimates, I don't think that will be part of the interview. Could be maybe one of two elements might ask, if, depending upon the context which the candidate has put in. But in general, I don't think that should be the case.
Fair. And guys, I think ISB interviews are always interviewee led, right? I mean, you have to give the interviewer the bait and then they'll ask you questions. So in my interview, I wanted to signal that I know a lot of things about finance, right? So when I used a lot of jargon in my interview conversation, then they started asking me questions about finance. So if you talk a lot about consulting and your post MBA goals, only then they might ask you a guesstimate.
Exactly.
So that is there. One thing, Amit, if you wish to divulge this, in terms of selection ratio, right? You have, LBS, which is 20%, INSEAD, which is 10%. What is the selection ratio for ISB?
Right. So we are almost close to top colleges worldwide.
Okay.
So around that range.
Okay.
In that 10 to 20 range.
Got it. Understood. So Sri Hari is asking a question which I had in mind. So interviews earlier used to be conversational, but over the last 2 years, basis what I've heard from my mentees who were shocked after their interviews, is that they grill you in the interviews now. So can you give us some insights on how a typical interview goes in terms of duration, who's taking it?
Sure. So interviews are taken by the ISB LMs, and typically we try to map the candidates to the LM's background, right? And each panel will have LMs from different batches. Somebody, at least somebody from a senior batch, somebody from the 15s, somebody from the 18s, and so on and so forth. It's what we try to make a panel like. And the LMs will have access to profile a day prior, minus your quantitative parameters, and they discuss that the profile 15 minutes prior to the interview among each other as well, right? So ideally, the interviews are supposed to be conversational. Depending upon how you respond, they might start grilling you also in certain aspects. But it's totally, as you mentioned earlier, led by the interviewee. So in your hands, I basically.
Got it. Do we consider application as EO if we have 2 years of work ex at the joining date? So Ravi, you have to consider your work ex when you're applying, right? So Ravi's work ex as of September 2023. If it's less than 24 months, then Ravi will apply as an EO. Otherwise, he'll apply as a PGP applicant.
No, it's not that way. So
Okay.
31st of March, if you have 24 months of work experience, the system will automatically classify you as EU or PGP. So you don't have to worry about that right now. You apply, it will automatically classify you as PGP or EU depending upon your work experience, and then you can get a call. So if you're completing 24 months by the class start date, even if you are an EO, you can request to join in that particular year itself.
Okay, understood. Fair.
Because there's a typical gap of 8-9 days in between the 31st of March and the class start date. So you can use that leeway.
Selection ratio for EOs, YLPs, I think Rohan, it's similar, 10 to 20%. Does the application and interview process differ when applying for EO versus PGP?
No, it's similar. Application for interview process for both EU and PGP is same.
Okay, got it. Does freelancing count as WorkX?
It does, if you can provide the proofs of earnings, contracts, or pay slips, or any bank statements. I think that should be fine.
Got it. Understood. And will paid full-time fellowships by the government be considered as WorkX?
Paid, which are not part of any undergrad or PhD course, would be considered, yes.
Okay.
It should not be part of any full-time course. So Teach for India fellowship is considered as work experience. Similarly, any other paid fellowships will be considered as work experience as long as they're full-time and not part of a course as such.
Okay, understood. Fair. Guys, any other questions before we conclude? Can one defer his or her admit by a year?
Yes, you can defer under certain reasons by 1 year, but you have to give it in time for the deferral window. So you can't say 2 days before the class started, I want to defer. So it has to come in time. There's a window given to you in an offer letter, and by that time you can defer, ask for a deferral, giving your reasons.
Got it. Arnav, Amit answered this question, which is full-time internship counts as WorkX if you're paid, if it's after your undergrad, right? Okay. who is okay. So if somebody's working on their own startup, what exactly in terms of documentation do they have to submit?
So it could be the ROC documents or the GST slips, or any documents which they can showcase. Last resort, we can also give a self-declaration to us. That to be counted.
Got it. Understood. And if someone wants to be self-employed and they're honest about it in the interview, would they be given less preference as against somebody who wants to join corporate after ISB?
No, not at all. So
Okay.
somebody wants to be self-employed or as an entrepreneur, definitely, we might get a preference as well, because we are very strong on entrepreneurship at ISB. And you'll know that, we offer one specialization as entrepreneurship among this 10 which we offer to our students. We have 2 incubation centers now. So I know personally of people, of students who come and will opt out of placements and then chart their own path. So of
Okay.
course, most welcome.
Understood. And it's so to be very honest with you, it's a transformational process. Like a lot of us, I wanted to get into consulting after ISB. I got in through the off-campus route, but then I started my own venture, right? So trust me, a lot of your goals will change once you undergo the program. So that's why nothing is set in stone. No, if you're selected as an EO or a YLP, you will not be evaluated again, Koshi. You have a deferred seat with the school. You will join when you're eligible.
Yeah, but for scholarship, you'll be given scholarship with respect to the pool in which you are joining, the cohort. So what will happen is, before joining, let's say by January, we'll send you a link to update a profile. Although you have an admit, but your scholarship will be decided against the pool in which you are joining. So scholarships are typically for the cohort. Admission, you may get it earlier.
Okay, understood. And just one thing, Amit, before we conclude, can you shed some light on the need-based scholarship? What's the income threshold for that?
Sure, sure. So need-based scholarship is offered to people whose annual family income is less than 18 lakhs per annum. And that includes the candidate themselves and their parents, dependent parents, or spouse if they have one. And then they need to write an essay, additional essay in the application for need-based scholarship. And basis their performance in the selection process and their need, will be offering waivers up to 25 lakhs for such candidates as a part of the scholarships.
Okay, understood. And have we decided the dates for round 2 and round 3 this year?
Round 2 and round 3 are not decided. Typically, round 2 will be usually is first week of December, and round 3 will be somewhere around third week of January.
Okay, understood. Awesome. I think that answers most of the questions. Guys, if you have not answered any questions, feel free to write to the ISB team or feel free to reach out to me. We'll be more than happy to assist you. But I hope this was helpful in answering most of your questions. And thank you so much for joining. And thank you so much to Amit for answering all the questions.
Most welcome. It was a pleasure to be here, and thank you for having me here. And all the best to all the prospects. Do reach out to us if you have any queries, and we'll be happy to answer them.
Sure. Thank you, Amit. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you.